Sin runs deep, your grace is more. Your grace is found, is where you are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. The sun comes up. It's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Draws near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Your grace is found, is where you are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We were just making comments about the old promo getting us started.
That
and our names
wonderful
in there.
that open, by the way, was made by Steve Gagan. He's sitting
Yeah,
over there and he's
yeah,
all proud, and that's why he had the longest title. And you notice because he's the
Yeah.
creator.
Well, welcome, everybody, and thank you. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and I am going to admit to being a little bit of a rookie when it comes to this idea of healing and of memories. And the things they say here just struck me very, very deeply. And by the way, I say one more thing, and then I'm going to pray for you, us all. Imprimi potest, which means there's nothing that we're going to talk about here tonight, as far as the book is concerned, that is in any way contradiction to the church and its teaching.
Even though you may at times think that that's contradictory.
yes. Well,
That's important to say
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And we learned that last week, didn't we? Yeah.
And there's a lot of different comments people get sent to us and said, "Wait a minute, you're contrary." No, we didn't. And in each case, we didn't. Let's begin in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, all of us have been hurt. All of us have experienced a need for healing in our lives. What is this healing that Jesus comes to bring? How do we misunderstand it? How should we understand it? How can we make it a deep, deep part of our lives? Bless us tonight as we ponder the healing of memories, prayer, confession, steps to inner healing. And we ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Marty, off you go.
Okay, it's as Father said, it's a book. This one's called Healing of Memories. These are the Linds. They are Jesuits. We read one of their books talked about one of Good Goats last week. We have this one. There's 3 in this series. We have another one coming up next week. And I'm glad you said what you said about this, because when I was reading it, there were more than once where I just literally stopped and went, huh? And and I don't mean that I didn't quite understand it, but it was maybe a different take. And I'm glad you reiterated, nothing in here is not church teaching, although you may think when you hear things. But Father, I want to
or put it this way, it's not in contradiction to church. They may speculate sometimes.
Okay,
but that's
you're
allowable.
Right, you're right.
Allowable.
Not everything that's written in here is absolutely taken straight from a church text.
Right.
But it is.
No contradictions.
Its basis, its base, its purpose, its conclusions are based on church teaching. Okay.
And any true theologian should be speculating somewhere along the way. And by the way, look in the bottom of your screen there. There's our text number. And Jerry's over here waiting patiently for all your questions.
Yeah,
Jenny,
I mean,
Kevin,
if you don't want to put a comment on there, you can text him. You have, let Jerry know. And again, we say this all the time, but I want people to understand texting is the anonymous part of this. So don't worry. really, we're not going to use your name, right?
Yeah, nobody can see. Like somebody just texted, "Good evening, everyone."
Right.
Nobody else sees that if you're texting it.
Right. And
Yeah,
even the
that's right.
comments, I mean, we're not necessarily going to give away everybody that's on there. If that, you
Right.
know, like if you don't want it, if you don't want your name mentioned, just put that as part of your comment. And when Jerry does his little rap, he won't say it. But Father, let's start with your take on a question that the authors ask in the beginning of the book. They say, how many times do we plead for forgiveness, whether in confession or prayer, and things do not change? How do we know whether God wants us to ask for that forgiveness so that he can draw us closer to himself? So it's basically, we ask, it doesn't happen. Is that God doing that? Is that we're not asking the right question? We're not listening? What is that all about?
I think it's all three of those things, all three of those together. And I think pretty much since you asked that question first, kind of like last week, that's going to be the gist of what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay.
All those different things. How we ask for forgiveness. Why are we asking for forgiveness? Is it because we want to feel a little better, or do we really want to be forgiven? Why don't things change? Well, that's a really good question. Are we interested in change? Do we really want to allow God to change us? Or are we just sort of like saying the right words to try to get the response we want? One thing God isn't, or Jesus isn't, he's not codependent. And so we cannot manipulate him in any way, even though we try a lot of times. Doesn't happen.
And I think, anytime when you pray and you ask for something, and you'll hear this from people who say it's all hocus pocus and mumbo jumbo. I prayed for such and it didn't happen. And, and sometimes if someone I know is making that claim, and I'll say, well, exactly how did you pray? Well, I asked him, I said, hey, I need $1 million.
I didn't hear a thing.
And I didn't get anything.
Yeah.
And that's not what this is about, right?
And if you're walking the tightrope of faith, you fall off of one side and you fall into superstition. And when it comes to prayer and healing, there's a lot of superstition about all that.
I don't know if all, my limited experience with confession over the last 25 years, obviously you and I talked last week, but it's an interpretation by the priest who's hearing I've never heard a priest promise that because you came to me and because you unburdened yourself of that, this is going to happen to you, because how would we know that, right?
We don't know, because there's many factors involved.
That doesn't
Yes.
mean that you don't counsel people that if you pray for it, you at least are opening the possibility that could happen. Because if you
Absolutely.
ignore him, if you don't talk to God about something you want, the odds of it happening are not all that good. Fair enough?
I agree. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Now, here's a question again. A lot of these are strictly straight from the book
Yep.
or sections
I
of
got the book in my hand here, so.
And this one just goes right to the heart of the matter. Does Christ always heal those who have asked for forgiveness?
Okay.
Always.
And the short answer is no.
No.
Now, let me quote from the book because, again, I think it's important that we do that a little bit here sometimes. And he writes, sometimes I ask to be healed for the wrong reasons. To seek healing only to live up to another person's expectations or to live with fewer tensions falls way short of asking for healing because Christ wants me to be healed, because he came to share friendship with me. Christ wants to heal me of anything that blocks that closeness. Now, hang on to that sentence, folks, because that's really, really important. He wants to heal you of anything that will block your relationship with Jesus. There is an infallible way in which God wants to heal you if anything blocks that relationship you have with him. So that is an essential part. Now, I said at Mass, I forget which one it was, but I said at one of the Masses that anytime you meet Jesus, in any way, shape, or form, you will be healed in some fashion. If you open yourself up to meet him, and he will heal you because he always wants that relationship. When I look at healing from Christ's viewpoint, I see my woundedness as it distances me and others from Christ. So our woundedness, as it distances me from Christ and others and from myself, he will never honor that. Never honor that if you ask for healing in such a fashion. It'll distance us from him or as some kind of self-aggrandizement of myself. Those kind of things will not be answered. But if I am looking for a closer relationship with him, and if I'm looking for intimacy with others and with myself, that is a healing he will always want to offer.
But you're asking for healing, you're asking for forgiveness, but you have to be sincere, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not just about, and I don't know, maybe
Smokes out the phonies, I think.
and maybe in the sacrament of reconciliation, depending on the circumstance, you're 25th in line and you're going to get in there and you're trying to get through it because there's 25 people behind you.
And mass is in 15 minutes.
And mass is in 15 minutes. So you're not really going, I mean, good for you being there, but you can also talk to him in prayer, talk to him privately and ask the same
Come
thing.
tomorrow night or Tuesday night, I'll talk all you want,
Well, but that is a point, though, that, people rush through it. We rush through everything. Everything we do. we have to
I
do it.
hate to rush through it, but like even this weekend, right before Mass, I had a line there, and I actually said to one person, I can see afterwards because I got to go.
Well, yeah, because you got to do
I don't want to
that.
rush through it.
Yeah, but that's the problem. I think people, when they go, maybe because sometimes you'd have a deeper conversation if you think you've got the time to talk.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you will always find the time. I mean, maybe not then. Maybe you say,
Yeah.
talk to me later. We'll set up an appointment. But
Yeah.
that's another excuse we use for not going. Well, I don't have time to tell you everything that's going on. Look at that line. I've
Make
been
an
holding-
appointment. I'll talk to you.
And when you have the two nights that you have coming up, your hope is that you're going to have a lot of people coming.
I'm hoping. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the point of that is you've got 6 priests. There's only so much time, whether you want to or not. I mean, there's got to be a little expediency through all that,
well,
right?
A little bit, yeah.
But that's not the
Not as
reason
much
to
as
come.
before Mass.
Right. That's not the reason not to come. Is
Exactly.
basically what I'm
Yes,
trying to
yes,
get.
yes, yes.
Okay. This was a question that the authors put. Again, these folks speak at retreats all the time, and these books are oftentimes a capsulization of a retreat that they just had. But they had this question from a retreatant: how do you think the sacrament of reconciliation could become more of a healing experience? You're the pro at this. How many times have you spent? How many days, hours have you spent in a confessional?
Oh,
And
yeah, a long
well,
time.
my point is
Yeah.
that's the sacrament of reconciliation. Can it become more of a healing experience than it already is? And
Yes,
what
yes.
depends on that happening?
Now, one thing, I think some of you have read Matthew Kelly's book he talks about confession, or a talk he gave, I can't remember. And he talks about this image of confession being wiping the whiteboard clean. You dirty it, wipe it clean.
Right.
Can I say right now, that is the worst image I could, with all due respect to Matthew Kelly, the worst image I know of what really confession is all about, in something that can be healing for us. Because I wipe it clean, that means I get to dirty it again.
Right.
All
Well, I
over
think,
again.
don't you think maybe he was just trying to say you unburden yourself of all the things that are on that whiteboard?
Well, maybe that's what you're
Maybe
saying.
not cleaning it, but at
Yeah,
least,
yeah, yeah.
I'm going to tell you, Father, I'm going to tell you about this. I'm going to tell you about this. Check off, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. If you just say, because I know better, the few times I've been, that slate's not, I may think it's clean and then go right out and do it again.
Do it again. Now, this little article that I have here that I use with the catechumens, it says, perhaps too often the sacrament is used as a means to get rid of guilt feelings or to get the old slate clean. Not a good look for the sacrament. In such circumstances, the primary focus is on the self, getting myself cleaned up. I mean, it's like earning your salvation. The focus is on yourself. So it's not right. It's absolutely not right. And the focus is on self and not on reconciliation with God and others. So if you want healing in the sacrament of reconciliation, focus on reconciling relationships. Relationship with God, relationship with yourself, relationship with others. Now I got something where I'm healing relationships. I'm not trying to wipe the slate clean, which is all about me. Oftentimes we go to confession, it's all about me, as opposed to confessing so I can be in a right relationship with people. The book goes on to say, it says, for confession to physically and psychologically heal, we confess and expose for healing not only the scars, but also what caused the scars. There'll be a second part. What caused me to have a broken relationship with that person? What's going on inside of me that caused that? What's the thing that happened in my past that somehow or other caused me to act in such a way that causes problems all over the place? So we need to also, and he kind of goes on to say, when we confess that, we do not speak out as Christ wants us to, we speak from the scar. But when we confess that we have not forgiven the person who laughed at us in grade school, we touch the scar and the cause of the scar. So we want to touch the causes of those things. Does that make sense?
I think so. I guess maybe to just whittle that down a little bit. Give me a primer, and we'll talk more about this as we go
Okay,
on. But a
okay.
primer of I'm going in the confessional, and I'm in the mode that you've got me here. You know, asking for forgiveness, and you threw out a lot of information in that last answer. You threw a lot of points out there.
Okay.
Is there a way? What should my tunnel vision be before? Maybe not when I'm walking in, but as I'm preparing to go, because
Okay.
you have to prepare for this,
Excellent,
right?
excellent, excellent. I agree. And the rite of penance, or they call it the rite of penance in the church. There's an examination of conscience in there. Best one, the one we're going to give you tomorrow night is really good. It comes from Lourdes. I grabbed that program from Lourdes, and there's 3 things we should examine our conscience on. First of all, what's my relationship with God? How am I? Now, be honest with yourself. How's my relationship with God? How's my relationship with other people? Mostly the more important people in my life. And what is my relationship with myself? Now, that's one I think we really mess up on.
And I think maybe that should be the first one.
Maybe it should. Maybe it should. Because we really, really do not allow ourselves to somehow have, most of us are walking around with a certain kind of self-contempt. I'm one of them.
I completely agree.
You know, I'm one of them.
completely
So
agree.
I am constantly trying to confess my disposition, my negative disposition toward myself.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Maybe you don't. I'd like to know if you agree with me or not. I mean, this isn't about presenting a program. You know, reconciliation is not, well, I've got to not, you know, I got to hit all these check marks.
Right. No, yeah.
It doesn't really, and you've said this to me. I remember when I said to you, I said, act of contrition. I haven't done an act of contrition. And you said, so what? It's not important. That's not what
Just
this,
say you're sorry.
say you're sorry. That's what
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
really
yeah,
about.
yeah.
And I think
Most people don't know what contrition means.
but I think, you know, I think a lot of people go in and they think, oh, I got to do it this way and I got to do this and I got to, I mean, we all go back, people our age go back to what we were taught when we were young. And it's, you know, how many times I hit my sister and my brother and all that.
Right.
And it really was meaningless. It didn't.
and it never changes any relationships.
No, it really, really doesn't. All right. The book talks about the need, and hence the title, Healing of Memories, the need to heal memories. And the authors urge the reader to make a choice. And it is this: will I let past hurts control me and keep me acting in self-centered ways? Or will I let the peace and love of the Holy Spirit control my future? When I read that, I thought, well, I think that sounds like all of us. We're all in that position, right? We're letting are these hurts going to control me and keep me acting as I shouldn't? Or am I going to let the Spirit in to help control my future? I'm thinking we may want the Spirit to come in, but we're going to spend more time in the first part of this. You know, I'm going to let those past hurts and those deeds. And
Well, maybe I not misread it, but I read it too soon. You know, for confession to physically and psychologically heal, we confess and expose for healing not only the scars, but what caused them.
well, the healing memories, which is the point of this
Yes,
whole
yes,
book.
yes.
And I got to be honest with you, when I read that, I thought, well, I thought the best thing to do if they're bad memories is to lose them. Don't dwell on them. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we do that? I mean, are we
No,
healing?
you can't lose them. You don't lose them. Yeah.
Well,
That's very good. That's very important. Everything that happens to us goes down into the very depths of our souls and it remains there. And everything that we do somehow, oftentimes, is a response to especially deep hurts. The spiritual life, actually, as I understand it, the life of prayer, actually, as I understand it, on the deepest level, is a circling down into the unconscious. And as you circle down into the unconscious, you hit those healings or those memories along the way. And as you hit them, you begin to reconcile them as you go. So your life of prayer actually does a lot of that. But the sacrament too is a way for you. And I give a model of that as we go on with all. I give a model for all that. But does that make sense? Do you understand what I mean by memories? How do you guys see, who are watching us now, how these memories of your past, these wounds of your past, how they affect your life? Why don't you comment on that for us right now?
yeah,
Let us know what that is.
you talk about it all the time about you come with a lot of baggage.
Yes.
And in some cases, the baggage is from not yesterday, not last week, not last month. Might have been 20 years ago. And you've been carrying it for 20.
Yeah.
And you talk about
50.
Or whatever. So those are memories that you can't shake. I think it's fair to say this. So when you think, oh, I can handle this, and if you really do a deep dive into your conscience, you go, oh boy, I got to tell them about this one. But I don't. This is hard. which is why confession
Yeah.
reconciliation is not easy.
And why people don't go. Yeah.
Exactly, because I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So memories are a big part of our healing, right?
Absolutely.
enough.
Absolutely. And when you go down there and you touch each of those, they don't go away. The scars remain.
Yep.
Like Jesus, when he resurrected from the dead, had his scars. Our scars remain, but they can be healed. And when you're scarred, I have scars all over my body. They heal, then all of a sudden you're fine. Everything is good. Whenever they're not healed yet, they're not scars, they're kind of open wounds.
Okay, the authors, again, their words, urge us to thank God for our gifts, and they write this. When we ask for healing, we shouldn't immediately rush into it. Rather, we should start knowing ourselves as He knows us. How important is that? Should we
I think that's absolutely critical, because then the healing will occur. Once we begin to find healing and being in right relationship with ourselves, really knowing ourselves. We talked about before, don't believe your own BS, and a lot of times
And we all
can
do.
believe our own BS. And whenever we got honest with, it stings to be honest with yourself. I think that's hard, but knowing yourself is the first. And I really believe it is not possible to know yourself without some kind of disclosure of yourself to somebody else.
which is the challenge
Mm-hmm.
of confession reconciliation. I mean, I have to share the good and the bad and the ugly within me with you, and that's
And
not
I have to do
easy.
the same thing too.
And
by
that's
the way.
not easy to do.
No, oh no. Because you always, when I go to spiritual direction, I go to confession, the thought that's always in my mind, I wonder if he's going to reject me. I wonder if he'll finally
Oh.
reject me.
Trust me, that's paramount. That's number one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to bare my soul here, and it may not work.
Right.
Right.
He may reject me and he throw me out the door. Ooh, that's a risk.
Well, flip this around. You're in the confessional and somebody's trying to tell you, how do you counsel? And I don't mean asking for specifics, but okay, it's a tough time. If they've made it that far,
Yep.
they've made some personal sacrifice to get there. If it's the rhythmic people that go to confession twice a week and they just go in and they do it, I'm not knocking them.
Nobody goes twice a week.
But you know what I'm saying? But whatever. If they go on a real regular basis, it's a little different than somebody hadn't been there in 25 years. Jerry, what is this along the lines, or can I ask this?
I got two comments when you're ready to.
But I'm
finish your
just,
thought.
how do you counsel there? I mean, because if I don't look in here, it doesn't really matter what I say to you.
You know, that's a good question, because I think two things I have to figure out. If this person already is mortified or they are struck by what they've done, my situation is extremely easy in many ways. If they're sitting there, I did such and so, no big deal, I'm working on it. I might get a little more direct in that regard. If they're just sort of like humming their way through it. And I have to try to feel my way through that, because if you push too hard, I'll never see them again. If I don't push enough, are they really, it's almost like today at Mass when I said, how do I say this gently, get your butt here for
Yeah, when it
confession.
wasn't gently at all. It was,
That's basically what you said.
Yeah, I know.
he goes, and boom, here it comes.
yeah.
The hammer's coming down.
Yeah, it's almost like, I'm just like thinking, I'm trying to get some people, it's like, come on, man, you gotta wake up here. How do I get, and if I'm real nice, could you come, please do that?
Well,
No,
you
they're
didn't do
not
that.
coming.
You don't have to worry. You
They're
did not
coming.
do that.
So there is a way of trying to find that spot where they are and how you can engage them to go a little step further.
I mean, I could be doing brain surgery, and that's not enough. I've got to come to. I've got to
Oh
come
yeah, what
to.
are you wearing today? With all, I can see your thing you're wearing with us today.
Huh?
Your
My new.
blowing
It's my new employer, and I didn't wear that to show it on the show. My family came over to my house today because I start this job tomorrow, and they were like, it's a little party, so I put it on their honor, and till I walked in here, and I think Steve or Jerry said something about it. I went, oh yeah, okay. But anyway, I'm not important.
one quick thing before we go to Jerry.
Yeah.
Sometimes the
Poor
Holy
Jerry's he's stacking them up over
That's
there.
right.
Sometimes the Holy Spirit will show us the root memory by making us aware of when we first began acting such and such a way. When looking at this past memory, we do not look at this memory to see how terrible we are. There you go. But rather to see what blemish we can refashion with our artist, speaking of God. we are aware of a memory that mars us. Let us thank the Spirit for this self-knowledge. If not, then let us share any painful memory with Christ. So there's your thanking. We thank the Spirit for giving us the knowledge of that memory that has hurt us so deeply. We're grateful for that.
Jerry, finally, we can get to you now.
Yeah, here's a couple comments worth, and the first two are pretty well related. Father Mark, at a retreat many years ago, you told us that we never forget the hurts, but we can forgive them.
Yes, we never forget. I don't think we ever forget.
And Arlene says, in relation to that, the memories of a deep hurt lasted for many years. I finally have peace because I truly forgave that person.
Well, I think that's the way of healing those memories, of course. Yeah, I think that's very true.
What
Very
about
true.
though when the hurt is you're not forgiving another person? You got to try to figure out a way to forgive yourself.
Oh, I think that's the toughest of them all.
And I
to
got
forgive
one more.
yourself.
I think
Okay, go ahead.
I'm
that's
sorry.
a good thing to move
Yeah,
on to. Let me
yeah.
finish this one here. Sometimes those memories seem to come out of nowhere, but not really. Very confused about the author talking about cardiovascular conditions and cancer as part of our healing journey.
Right. Yeah. And as he says at a certain point, he says at one point, how can some people see cardiovascular conditions and cancer as a way of healing? Other people, it sends them into the psychiatric hospital. You know, it's all in how we look at all these different things. And I think if we have a foundation of faith and prayer, I think that we have a better chance of rebounding with those things and finding a deeper meaning. Like, for example, I've had cancer twice. You've had it, and even heart stuff and everything else. I don't think I could counsel somebody about cancer just because I had it. I got to hear what they think about it, what their situation is, what's going on with them, and then we can talk about all those different things. And so, if I have a life of faith, I think we have a better chance of finding the healing and all that.
I have always said since my first diagnosis, when I talk to cancer patients, people who have cancer, and I just tell them a simple thing that I decided at the second I was told, I got it, I'll have to deal with it, but I'm not going to let it define me. It is not going to define my life. It may win in the end because it is cancer, and it has it will have the upper hand. But I'm not going to let it define me. And sometimes
big. Yeah,
I think
I agree.
that's true of sin. I can't make it. Maybe I have to work to get rid of it, but I don't let
Forgive
it
it,
define
forget
me.
it, yeah,
But when we'll go back to where I was in the beginning there, like, okay, I can forgive that person because that's really, to me, that's superficial. But what if I can't forgive myself? What if I can't unburden myself? I mean, I did something. Maybe you said something to me that precipitated some, but then I'm the one who did it, and I'm not mad at you. I mean, I could be. I could say, well, if you hadn't said that, I never would have done it. But that's different than forgiving myself.
It's both and. It'd be both and. Yeah. Forgive me and forgive yourself. But forgiving yourself is tough. That's a tough.
You can't do this if you don't, right?
Yes, I think it's critical. If we don't have a good understanding of ourselves or a love of self on some level, we will never be able to love anybody else. I am completely convinced of that.
Well, I think a lot of us too at that point. Well, we can. You want us to forget? Well, I didn't really do anything. I mean, I thought I did it, but it wasn't that big of a deal. If you really do a deep self-inspection of that baggage,
Yes.
then you know that you just can't blow it off, right?
Right. I agree.
You just
Yeah.
can't. You just can't.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm sorry. I know my phone's buzzing over here. I apologize. My wife just sent a text, and I will get to it in a second, hon. Don't worry. Okay.
She's
All
not
right.
using
She
the
gets top
proper channel,
priority, you know.
Marty.
Okay. Here's another question from the book for you. One that I guarantee you, as I read this and I thought, got
Yeah, you
this.
said
I
it, yeah.
struggle with this. How can you thank God for your talents, your blessings, so on and so forth, without making it an ego trip? Like, boy, thank you for allowing me to get my new job and to resurrect a career that I thought was done. And but you're doing this because I'm so good at what I do. I'm on that ego trip, and I shouldn't be, right?
Okay, correct. Because once we know ourselves in truth, there is a certain humility with all that too. I begin to be comfortable in my own skin with my assets and my liabilities. I think a lot of people come to confession and folks, and admit they say they are envious of somebody else because of what they have or
Yep.
something else. And you know what? I really believe, once you become comfortable in your own skin and you really believe who you are in Christ and you're walking in that on a certain level, I think the envy thing just flies away. just goes away, and a lot of the other stuff does too. And we're just living our thing. Now, it is really easy to get all caught up on yourself in different things. But in my experience, God always allows me to land again. If I get a little bit too high, he makes me land pretty fast. I get a little bit too low. Somewhere along the way, I'm going to hear that I'm the beloved once again.
But the ego gets in the way, right?
Well, it's always an issue. That's for sure.
Marlene just gave you an affirmative on agreeing with you about cancer not defining us, Marty.
Okay.
God has a plan. But here's another one. It's a text. If you have forgiven yourself, but the person you have offended / hurt won't forgive you, close family member, what do you do?
You know what? There might not be much you can do.
Hmm.
And you know, that's kind of, I think, if you open your heart to forgiveness and it is rejected, I think you walk away in peace.
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt that, you know, if someone asks you for forgiveness, then the ball's in your court.
Yeah.
You know, that's your.
Yeah. If somebody won't forgive me, and that's happened in my life, people just won't forgive me.
Oh,
And that has been very hurtful. But after a while, it's almost like, I'm sorry, I got to kind of, I cannot require them to forgive me.
If they don't forgive you, do you leave that buried within you, and do you work to try to figure out ways, or do you let it go?
I think you mostly let it go. I think you do. I think if you find an opportunity to be able to ask for forgiveness once again, I think you let it go. I really do. And you've done your best, and I think you have to let that go.
But you got to give it a good shot though, too,
Yeah,
don't you? I mean,
I
you have
think
to
you do.
do as much as you can, but if
Yeah.
it's never going anywhere, and we've all been in those types of situations, you just know that person is never, ever, ever. They're just going to carry it forever,
Yeah.
and it's going to drag you down.
Yeah. And yes, it is hard. In my racket, there's people that don't forgive me all the time for different things that I might do. That maybe I did. I don't think I did anything wrong or anything like that. But they
I
don't
think
like
maybe you
what I
might want to
did.
say it somewhat different than my racket, because that
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
like, you know, it's performance, and that's not what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not going to make everybody happy. You know that.
Oh,
I'm-
I know everything I do is going to make somebody.
Oh
unhappy.
no, somebody's going to find. I guarantee there were people. The only mass I know about when we got berated for not going to confession was 11 o'clock. I'm sorry, but you know, I mean, it was like bang, 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 bang. Well, you know, somebody's going to look at that and say, "How do you have the right to tell me? What do you know what I'm doing tomorrow night or Tuesday night?
Right.
I can't come." You basically said,
Well,
"There's
you're-
no reason, none."
You're
Zip.
welcome to get, but if you take it in the attitude in which I offered it, you understand. what I'm
Exactly.
doing, you know?
But that's my point, though.
Yeah.
People will always, if you're going to be that superficial, that
Yeah.
you're going to worry about what somebody said and what you think what they meant. You think you know what they
If
meant.
someone said I go to work tomorrow night, I understand. I'm not crazy. I might be a little nut. I'm not crazy. So
I'm just going to let that one go right where it is. Okay. All right. The authors say we should ask Christ what he wants to heal. And they put it this way: do I really desire healing as the prodigal son did, even if it meant no longer being a son? Because he was ready to give it up, right? I mean, he came back. He didn't know what his father was going to do, how his father was going to treat him, right? So
Right,
if
right,
I
right.
if I ask Christ, you know, if I ask God for healing, the prodigal son did it, and I got to give up something. If you heal me, I've got to no longer do this or do that. I mean, is that worth it? Should we take it to
all
that
right,
degree?
that is a really good question, I think. And again, let me go back to the book where it says, when change happens, Christ celebrates that and ignores the hurt. In the story of the lost son, the father does not. I think that's not the quote I'm looking
Okay.
for.
The father forgives the lost son, but the lost son comes back and asks for forgiveness. He has no idea what his father's going to do, right?
Why do I have written down here? This is
Maybe it's because we have two
I just
different
read
books.
something where the son never even asked for forgiveness. He just
He
wanted
never
something
does.
to eat.
Well, he really didn't. He just wanted something. But he's coming back to make that. He knows what he left. He's coming back. He's hungry. He's figuring, you know, I've screwed this up.
Yeah.
And even if I'm not going to be your son, I don't think he came back thinking, well, you're going to kill the fatted calf and you're going to give me the
No, he
finest
was
robe.
not expecting
He
that.
was not expecting
Yeah,
it.
He was
but
expecting a job, hopefully.
but he was coming back. He wanted healing for what had happened. I mean, I think he realized, the way I read it, when he left and as he was gone, he thought, you know, I didn't play that very well, right?
Right.
So he has got to be asking for healing, and he's not sure his father's going to take him back at all.
Right.
But he makes the ask anyway.
Right.
And you're right, he was hungry. That was a part of it, but there had to be more than just the hunger.
Okay, I'm going to answer this in a way that I think the author is intending that because it's a really good part for us. The prodigal son, he came back and he said, I'm going to come back and I'll even be your servant if it's what's required for you to take me back.
Right.
And the question I think we're supposed to be asking ourselves at this point is that what are we willing to risk to be healed?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. He was willing to risk not even being a son anymore and being a hired hand. And so, I think I'm going to talk about this, excuse me, this Sunday at Mass. If we're not willing to risk everything on being healed, then I would say to you, if we have conditions on being healed, if it's got to be my way to be healed. And by the way, folks, I hear this all the time. I want this, only this. I don't want to hear anything else. This is what I want. You ain't getting it. I mean, what are you willing to risk? That's the part I was looking for. I couldn't find it, but that's the point of what he was trying to make. He was willing to risk everything. He was willing to be a hard hand. He was willing to risk being completely rejected to be healed. What are we willing to risk? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And what my fear was always, okay, I'm going to unburden all of this baggage, all of this stuff, and I'm going to give it to you. Well, what if you don't forgive me? Or what if you say, well, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. And then
It's okay.
that's all right.
Yeah.
But you understand how then it's like, oh, why did I come here? I mean, I'm not saying you, but I mean, do you, like the son, when he came back, he was trying to unburden himself of what he did, but he really had no way of knowing what his father was. He certainly didn't think he was going to be fed with the fatted calf and wear the fine robe.
No,
and
that
all other
surprised
stuff.
him. Completely
So
surprised him.
does he think, or did he think, or should we think, I'm going back and I'm going to make my pitch, but what if he says no again? Or what if he says,
Well, then,
you left, you're out?
I've risked it all.
Right.
And I would say that if you go and you risk it all, God will never abandon you in that.
But you can understand why
Never.
people would think,
Yes, never. I'd say part of my whole conversion thing at the age of 24, I was completely convinced my life was garbage, absolutely garbage. And so I was willing to do, I remember reading a book by the likes of Norman Vincent Peale. Anybody ever heard of Norman Vincent Peale before?
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
I was reading a book called The Tough-Minded Optimist. And a lot of that stuff kind of appealed to me as I was reading it. And it can never happen to me. These are all good. Norman Vincent Peale was the most positive guy on the face of the earth,
Yep.
I think, in many
Yep.
ways. So I read the text, which you guys all know, called Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I remember reading that and thinking, if that's true, I'll give up everything for you. I'll do everything for you. That was one of these life-changing moments. I think until we're willing to give up everything, absolutely everything, for God and for this healing that we're looking for, this release of anguish and pain, it'll never happen. But when we do give up everything, it does. And we risk everything, it will happen.
Is it fair to
I don't
be
know where that is in here, but anyway, that's what I was looking for.
Is it fair to be concerned that maybe this isn't going to work out?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and don't let that be a reason you don't do it. But yeah, if you have that trepidation,
Yeah.
and I think I've had this conversation with you. I have been to confession in my life where it didn't go very well.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't get, I didn't expect that there's no pain for what I did, but I was ignored and basically told, well, it's too late for you. And I was like, I'm telling
priest told you that?
Yes.
Holy
and so
crap.
that's
It's
why
never too late for anybody.
that's why I was adverse to going, because I
Yeah,
thought I don't want that to happen
That's
again.
that's the rejection that we all fear.
And so it's real to feel that. Don't
Yes,
I mean-
yes,
I mean, I
yes.
don't want people to think, it's not going to happen, because I had a circumstance where doesn't mean it was right, but that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to even think about talking to a priest after that, because I thought, okay, this isn't,
Right.
But that little fear, that trepidation that it's not going to be all right, that's actually, I think, going to strengthen you a little bit, right? There's nothing wrong with feeling like that.
No. Oh gosh, I feel that way every time I go to share my heart in confession or to spiritual direction. But folks, what do you guys think about that? You got to risk it all. I mean, you can have conditions if you want God to heal you. Once you let go of all your, I think I'm gonna talk about this weekend. I have a story that I want to share with you guys that might make the point of people who are feeling they're sick, they're messed up, and all of a sudden they risk everything to God, and it all goes away. I think that's true. I think it's happened in my life.
Doesn't mean it's automatically going to happen, though. I
No,
don't want to paint a
because-
Pollyanna
no,
thing. That,
no, you're right. Absolutely, you don't. But maybe I've given up everything. God, baloney.
you haven't. Yeah,
Baloney,
right.
you
I
haven't.
get you.
I'm talking about as best you know with your life and some real risk. Real risk.
Yeah, Jerry.
Karen says, if you're at the point where you have nothing left to lose, then it's easier to risk it all.
Absolutely.
And that's why people who, people who are pretty comfortable are just always going to brush it off and say, well, there's still some aspects of my life that are okay. I don't need this, But the people who are really down and out and feel like they've hit bottom,
That's hitting
I've
bottom.
kind of felt that.
Yeah.
That's hitting bottom.
That is hitting bottom.
And I couldn't find the darn quote. I'll find it after we're done. I like that. But anyway, that's the point. That's the point. Okay.
All right. Does every sin hurt other people beside the sinner?
Oh my gosh, yes. Sins are secret, but they're not private.
Because
And let's talk about the big
Okay.
one,
What? Go ahead.
the scandal.
Yeah. All right.
The scandal. I mean, the scandal. Look at the scandal. Not one of those sins were done in out in the open.
No.
They were all secret.
No. That
But
was the whole
boy,
point of it. That's why it was happening.
Yeah, they
Right.
blew up the whole church and continues to blow up the church even today. What a mess.
Well, what about, let's be real secret. What about me having really angry thoughts about someone or impure thoughts about someone?
Yeah,
And that's probably more where they're coming from asking this question.
probably you're right.
Probably
Probably you're right.
What am I hurting by having these impure thoughts about this woman or
Or,
whatever?
or maybe put it this way, Jerry. What about the sin where we're all consenting adults here? Baloney, number one. It still hurts people. There's no such thing as that. I don't think.
Okay, since you brought it up, when you talk about the scandal here, and I've told this story in like testimony or whatever about what happened to me, I was really angry at the then bishop of this diocese because he had become a friend. We had had deep conversations about a lot of the things that turned up in that grand jury report, which he basically said never happened. And so I'm reading the grand jury report, standing in the newsroom when I was working, and I'm reading this, and I'm getting more and more and more and more angry. And I mean, he's passed, so, but I don't think I could forgive him. I tried, but I don't think I can because he made it personal, right? And I think that's an example that happens to a lot of people about that hurt that's out there. Now, how do I unburden that? Do I go to confession and say, well, I have to tell, because in my own mind, I said some really nasty things about that person. I was not, and I didn't feel good about it, but I was so angry. And I still carry that. I mean, I don't feel like I should apologize. Does that make any sense?
Well,
that you carry a burden that you don't want to lose because you don't think you can?
Well, that
I guess I'm using
kind of
my
segues into
example.
this book next week.
You know what I mean? I'm using my example, but it happens to a lot of people, right?
I think forgiveness is oftentimes a process. I have a kid who I have it in my notes here who did something to me in school when I was a teacher in Bellwood. I know his name. I can know what he looks like. He did something that really hurt me, and it still comes up. I get angry about it, and that was how many years ago? 40,
So you're
50 years ago.
carrying that. I don't
Yeah.
call it hate, but that
Oh
anger.
no, anger. Yeah.
Anger.
Yeah.
So
And
you've
I- and
never
I
forgiven
confess
him
it.
for that.
I'm trying.
I know,
working on it.
but how long
I
ago
love
were
the
you a
feel.
teacher?
Oh
How
my
long ago were
gosh.
you a teacher?
A long time ago.
You've been a priest for 38 years. When you were teaching at Bellwood, you were not a priest, right?
No, it wasn't. So that's more than 42 years ago.
Okay. And you're still carrying it. So I guess, and I'm not
Now,
making
I bring it up to you right now because I'm always asking for forgiveness for this. But when it comes into my mind, it's like, oh,
my point I'm making is that if you feel like that, you're not alone, and that's not necessarily wrong. It's tough to deal with that.
no, it's not a matter of right and wrong. It's
Right.
a matter of healing and not being healed.
And you're still not healed.
From that one, I have his name written right there.
Have you ever tried to contact him?
No, I wouldn't even know how. I wouldn't know where I would say.
Maybe he's watching right
could be
now.
watching,
He
you
can text
could
us
put
at
it out
And you
there.
know what? And you know what?
714-0996.
I was a football coach at one point up in there, and he
Would
was
he know?
he was one of my players.
Would he know?
And he and I thought, yeah, would he know that he hurt me like that?
Yeah.
I don't know. He's a kid. He was a kid.
Yeah, but
So-
still, I mean, if it hurts you to the point where 44 or 43 years later,
Yeah.
you're still carrying it,
Yeah.
I would like to think he'd know about
I would
it.
have to say I've never been more disrespected in my life by
Wow.
what he did to me.
Wow.
And I heard about it, and I felt like there was nothing I could do about it, and it just hurt me because of who he was. Because
Okay.
I thought we were friends in a way.
This is
Each other.
this
Anyway,
just
anyway, enough of me.
this is right on the page that wasn't tied to what you just told me. The authors say we should share with Christ a painful memory that keeps us from getting healed.
That would be one for me.
Have you shared it?
But yeah. Look at you. I just shared it with all you guys.
But
yeah,
I mean, you know, have you asked for forgiveness in the point where whether it was with your spiritual director or in confession,
Yeah.
but you're still carrying it, so you don't,
Yeah.
you probably didn't get the healing you were looking for?
Probably not at this point. Maybe I need to do it a lot more. I do a lot more. Yeah.
So I again, I'm not trying to make light of your situation, but I'm trying to say, okay, look who this is. Look what he's done with his life. He's not different than in this respect than any of the rest of
Yeah.
us. Something that happened to us, and we've carried it a long time. But you know that you.
I could be sitting in prayer, and that thought will come up in my mind, and it'll completely distract me.
It's that deep.
Yeah. And I continue to dig down and try to let it. I try to let it go.
Have you
and-
tried to change your life because of anything that happened at that moment? Like, did you accept that he did that to you because you did something? Or did you say, I didn't do anything?
Yeah, I think maybe he even holds some resentments as far as in athletics.
Because don't we all do that? And
Yeah.
we say, all right, he's not going to forgive me. Well, it's got to be something. But this was,
I must have done something that he was getting me back or something.
jeez.
So
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but
Yeah.
I'm happy you brought it up because it makes the rest of us feel like, okay.
yeah,
we're
root
there.
causes. Now, and if I go to the book again,
Uh-huh.
and the author says, when looking at I think I just read this to you, so don't worry about it. Okay, just keep on going. We're okay.
All right. The authors say, I'm sorry, does sin bring rewards, making that sin attractive?
Apparently, it
You
does.
know, you can feel how that is.
Well,
you know, like,
money, power.
yeah, I'm going to do this because that's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal from my neighbor, not
Look
technically.
at Putin for crying out
Well,
loud.
there you go.
You know, the private
powers,
the
you know.
power, the poster child.
So so the sin is attractive because of the rewards. So
Oh,
you're,
yes.
you're not really thinking, and how do you ask for forgiveness of that? Because you've taken the rewards, right?
What you have to stop before you can ever ask for forgiveness. That's got to go. You can't. I cannot be. And I look. I watch the news sometimes, not to get the news, but to look at personalities and what makes them tick. And I wonder about that. What's their great need for power or for money or different things? I watch it for that reason a lot of times.
We give you a short version of something someone said here and texted. Sometimes the only prayer I can say is forgive them for they do not know what they do. But often I have to rationalize the harm done to me that way.
Right, and that's okay. Now that could be also brushing it aside a little bit, and if that's the case, it's coming back. Because look at my situation.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with it as deeply as I obviously should yet, and it's kind of interesting. I bring it up. Maybe 100, 200 viewers are going to hear me say all that stuff. Makes me, and in one sense, just even sharing it with you guys makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did it. Glad I shared
Okay, from the book, writing
Yeah.
about the disciples who had met the risen Christ on the road to Emmaus. We know the story.
Yep.
You know, they don't recognize him. Their heads are down. They're depressed, and because what's happened the past couple of. Don't you know when he asked them what's going on? He said, "Don't you know what's happened here?" They're angry. They're disillusioned. But Christ doesn't scold them at that moment for feeling that way because he could have said, "Hey, don't you know who I am?" Which obviously they didn't. Is anger like pain a warning of something to be healed? And this one really struck me, and I love your take on this. How did Christ deal with anger? Because he was human, right? We know the only time we read about his anger is when he's in the temple, right?
Right.
And he's throwing out the money changers and all that. That's the only time we know he got angry, which I find a little hard to believe, to be honest, because of the things that were going on with him.
Yeah.
But, he's saying anger is like a pain. It's a warning of something to be healed. Well, Is that true? Is that if we're just
I think so. Now there's a quote in scripture. I think it's Proverbs. Help me, folks. Linda, where are you when I need you here? Be angry, but don't sin. It's either in something like James or it's in Proverbs or something like that. Be angry, but do not sin.
angry at somebody in a classroom 43 years ago and do not sin? Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about me, but
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's an example, though. Be
But
angry.
anger is always, now anger is a secondary emotion. It means it's an emotion that comes after another. It's caused by other emotions, which means somehow you're kind of trapped in a certain circumstance.
Is anger always a sin?
No, it's not, because
So you're
the
allowed to
Bible
be angry.
says, and I know that Steve, you're looking it up.
Looks like it's Ephesians 4:26.
What does it say?
Be angry, yet do not sin.
There it is. Be angry, yet do not sin. Yeah. So it must be possible to be angry and not sin. But for us, anger is pretty much always a warning sign. Now, for Jesus, that prophetic statement at the temple, he dealt with it. He dealt with this situation. You know,
Jerry, I'm
Um,
sorry.
This, I think it's interesting. Aggie says, I think you can forgive, but sometimes it resurrects. Then it hurts you all over again. Does it need to be confessed again and again?
Yeah, no, for your own well-being, I would say it wouldn't hurt you to do that, to confess over and over again. But of every single time, to forgive over and over again is necessary. I'd say yes, which is a segue into next week. But anyway, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can a person sin and yet come closer to Christ than ever? And they ask this question: what would you tell the person who commits many sins, thinking they can ask for forgiveness and then be closer to Christ than ever? I mean, I just go in and say, "Yep, now I'm getting closer to
Well,
Christ."
that's called the sin of presumption. So therefore, that is not there. Now, what they're saying here, let's suppose I have a problem with a particular sin. I'm busting my butt to somehow do something about that. Now, if I'm busting my butt, and let's suppose you're God and I'm me, okay, and I sin and I cut the string between you and me, and I come and confess it, and I'm forgiven, and we tie the string together again. What happens to the string?
Get shorter?
It gets
It
shorter.
gets
for
shorter.
Sure, yeah. I
So
mean,
it
the
drags,
distance between
it
us.
drags
it
us
drags-
closer together.
Okay, but what if it starts getting us closer together and I just cut the string?
Well, if I believe that if I am trying my level best, I'm giving everything I got to be able to heal this sin, you'll never cut it.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking, why did he tie this string together? What's he doing here? What's the game he's playing,
and
right?
Jesus said, not forgiving 7 times, but 77
Okay,
times.
all right, all right. All right, we are urged, as difficult as it can be sometimes, to become thankful for a painful memory. I've heard that preached in church. I've never heard you say it, doesn't mean you haven't. But how can tragedy like a death of a friend or an illness bring a person closer to his true self, his God, and his neighbor? I mean, there is, right? We're all been there. We've lost people that mean a lot to us. And we have to, it's a painful memory, but we should be thankful for that memory. Or
Well,
should
he
we be
okay,
angry?
yeah. He said, although I've applied the healing of memories to many years, only last year did I discover the importance of thanking God for the way a painful memory opened me to God, neighbor, and myself. After making a retreat, I was returning to the work in a psychiatric hospital, when the importance of becoming thankful struck me. I finally grasped that death, loneliness, or times of injustice can bring the person on the retreat closer to God, and yet bring my clients to the psychiatric hospital. Because when one saw as a blessing, the other one saw as a tragedy. So how can we see painful memories as either a tragedy or a blessing? And that's what he's trying to say. If we can somehow see it as a blessing as opposed to a tragedy, then he believes there's somehow we can do that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not easy, right?
No, none of this is
But,
easy.
and
at
I
this
guess
point. No.
the question then becomes that painful memory that we should try to see as a blessing. Maybe it's going to take us a while to get there. The anger is not going to go. I mean, I
think so.
can't just walk in and tell you something and say how angry I am that I remember a priest whose he was preaching at his nephew's funeral. His nephew had been killed in a hit and run accident.
Wow.
And they made the point, someone made the point that, it's God's will or it's God's plan. And the priest in his homily said, if that's his will, if that's his plan, then he needs to get another plan. I mean, he was angry about it.
Yeah.
You can't use that.
Don't
That's
say
a
that. Yeah.
painful
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah.
That would be hard to find. And I don't know that, do you have to find a blessing in something like that because you're angry at what happened?
Well, if you want to be healed in some fashion, or do you want to end up in a psychiatric hospital?
So, but I mean, when you're carrying that kind of pain,
that it's not easy. Now there is no memory of which we listen. I'm reading from the book, folks, because I mean I can have a painful memory happen 5 minutes from now,
Yes.
and I'm going to be
yes.
If
No,
we would write down 10 of our most important gifts, and then reflect on what period in life each of these gifts developed most extensively, we'd be surprised in how many grew during a time of tragic moments. How many of our gifts grew during tragic moments? I think that's true in my own life. The father was surprised to discover that when he felt most heartbroken, his relationship with his runaway son was strengthened. But similarly, the men at Emmaus were surprised when what they considered to be the darkest moment of their lives actually turned out to be the moment Jesus Christ ceased to develop a new relationship with them.
But it took them a while. They didn't get
Yeah,
that
yeah,
right away,
no,
right?
no,
I mean,
you
they
don't.
were just, and I always go back to that. I always think we were talking about that in class today because we were talking about the death of Christ and, how people would have been so disillusioned by
Yeah,
what was going
yeah.
on. And you can imagine the disciples. I mean, they are just like, their world has been shattered.
Shattered, absolutely shattered.
I mean, everything they believed in. And they believed with their heart and soul. They gave up everything they had to follow this guy. And now he's hung like a common criminal on a cross. And why would they think that they're walking down this road to Emmaus that this guy that's having a conversation with them
No
is
way.
no way. I
No
mean, who would?
No way.
And it's not even about why didn't they recognize him? Well, because maybe the last time they saw him, he didn't look anything like the
And
resurrected
and I
Christ.
think what you say is very, very true. And all of us have in every tragedy of our lives, there's always going to be an Emmaus moment when you and I can go down that road with Jesus and we have a choice. Am I going to allow him to redeem it, or am I going to just simply push him aside and go on with my bitterness?
In the book, they cite several written prayers for healing of memories.
yeah.
And I've often thought, and this is my own words that I wrote in the script that you got. I think the best prayer is often not something structured, but it's having a conversation with God. I mean, we wrote, we know the Hail Mary and the Our Father. We could recite all of these things, and we just
Well, these
say them.
prayers in here, there's a bunch of them, yeah.
But I mean, those are structured. But to me, it's always been about having that conversation. I've heard you say that more than once. Talk to God. However you do it, driving the car, taking a walk, sitting in your easy chair in the living room, just have that conversation. So if someone's looking for guidance into how to pray to heal a bad memory, okay, because you got to heal it somehow, what would you tell them? What kind of a conversation?
You can have that, but you know what? In that case, I wonder if a form prayer might offer you the words you couldn't find otherwise.
Okay,
in some
I'm not
case.
saying there's something wrong with
Yeah.
it, but don't
not a
think,
Hail Mary to our Father, but I'm saying one of these prayers he says there. Like I was recently at a penance service in our parish, and I had something was kind of bothering me, and all of a sudden I picked up there was a prayer there to Our Mother of Sorrows. Where I found that in another church, I did, but that prayer struck me so much. I still say it. Because it helped me in that particular situation so much.
So I don't mean that there's anything wrong with structured prayer. That wasn't what I was saying. But that conversation, maybe you found something that might have fit, but maybe the structured prayers that I'm looking at aren't
Won't
going to
fit.
fit with where I'm, what I'm trying to resolve.
Yeah.
So just having the conversation. All right. We only got a couple of minutes left. Monday and Tuesday are big nights here in the parish because no matter what you're doing, there's nothing more important than being here. Bring your
Absolutely.
children, bring your neighbors, bring yourselves, bring a lunch, do whatever because you got to
Hot on
be
the
here.
dog. Yep.
All right. And the authors, they must know this, Father Mark Begley,
least I
put a
made the
lot
point,
of stock into the value of confession to transform past hurts into gifts. So let's assume someone right now is watching who wants to do that, but doesn't have a clue about what to say when they come tomorrow night or Tuesday night to confession. Give them a little
He
guide.
gives me 2 minutes to do this.
Well,
Okay,
that's because I didn't want you to beat us up all night. So I'll give you 2 minutes to beat us up.
First of all, okay, thank God. When you come to confession, if you want to heal thank God for what he has done in your life, number one. And you all can do that who are watching us
Yeah.
right now. Secondly, confess what you want Jesus to heal. And I'm saying confess it in a fashion. Jesus, I'm willing to risk everything for this to be healed. So confess what you want to be healed, not the bad thing you did. What do you want to be healed? Either in your relationship with God, your relationship with others, your relationship with yourself. And thirdly, then try to discover what is the root cause. What is the painful memory that caused that thing? He gives a story in the book about a guy who kind of comes to confession. He says, God has touched me in many, many different ways to do different things. I'm confessing that an employee in the parish, an employee at work was so badgered by the other employees that somehow or other that person finally quit. I never spoke up. I never defended that person. And that was when he wanted to be healed. Then he went on to say, the reason why I didn't speak up is because whenever I was a kid, anytime I spoke up, I got laughed at in school. That's the painful memory that's caused him not to speak up for the employee, which caused her to quit. And he confessed all those. Does that make sense?
It does.
Thank God. Confess what Jesus wants you to heal. Surrender painful memories.
There's nothing that should keep you from confession, no matter what it is. And I wonder, do you have to get it all out the first time you go?
Well, if it's been a while, then don't worry about that.
You know
Go
what I
broad
mean? Like,
strokes.
you've
Go
got
with
a
broad
lot,
strokes.
right?
Yeah,
You-
go with
'cause-
broad strokes. But gradually, slowly, as you keep on coming back, you get deeper and deeper.
So come tomorrow night or come Tuesday night,
Yes.
please.
Unless you're a brain surgeon.
And you're working on a brain.
Well, and I was going to say, not just a brain surgeon, but you got to be busy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be able to come in scrubs because you either finished or you haven't started yet.
Right.
We're good. Then.
But that's about it. I don't think, Jerry, there was any other. What I heard in Mass today at 11, there was no.
Oh, yes. No.
So if we're not there, and I mean, I won't be there because I have to work. So I'm sorry, but
Broadcaster. I mean, it's our brains. Come on. man.
It bordered on holy anger. He meant it.
All right, next week, another Lynn book. This one's Don't Forgive Too Soon, Extending the Two Hands That Heal. Looking, right? That's the book.
There you go.
And we're going to talk about that next week. So
All right.
read these. I hope they're reading these books. Like this one that we just finished.
Yeah.
There's some neat things.
I'm not quite done yet, but I'm going to finish it.
And they're not expensive. They really aren't.
Yeah.
They look like they're kids' books, but trust me, they're not.
So-
Father, thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Grateful that we could share some thoughts with you. You're welcome to share any other thoughts as the week unfolds. Thank you very much for allowing us to become into your lives.
And
today.
don't forget tomorrow and Tuesday, okay? Please.
Bye now.
Bye.